And we're back. This dough has been sitting in the fridge overnight, so it continued to bulk ferment in the fridge, and now I'm going to prepare it for its second ferment, which is when I shape it and I put it in the bread loaf pans and I let it do a second rise. If you remember right from my first video, this dough did not turn out right according to my recipe. So the gluten wasn't developing. I couldn't stretch it between my fingers to get a nice window pane. And window pane will show you that the gluten has developed nicely and it's ready to turn into bread. You have to have good gluten development to get a nice rise out of your dough, to get a nice fluffy, pretty looking loaf of bread. So if you're getting pancake bread or UFO saucer bread, you can look to gluten development as one of your troubleshooting steps. So this one I didn't bail on until I got it to window pane. Check my previous video. How to Rescue Bread Dough is the title of that video. So take a look at that if you are wondering what your dough should look like before you progress to your bulk ferment. So here is one recipe's worth of dough, which makes 2 loaves of bread. So I'm going to spread it thin out into a big rectangle. Then I'm going to cut the rectangle into 2 pieces, and each one will be 1 loaf of bread. This time around, I always make a lot of bread at once, so I doubled the recipe to get 4 loaves. So here I split it in half, and then I'll roll these up into the actual loaves of bread. This is my beginner sourdough sandwich loaf recipe. I am tweaking it and going to put together the final recipe and release it here. So make sure and subscribe if you want a copy of the recipe when I release it. It is a really easy spot to start if you're new with sourdough. It's really hard to fail at this recipe as long as you watch the videos and you understand gluten development and the 2 ferment stages of making sourdough. So you can see I roll it up into a log and then I'll tuck the ends under so they aren't ugly in my end product, which is the loaf of bread. So it's like a little worm or caterpillar. Shape it with my hands. It doesn't have to be perfect because it is going into a bread pan and the sides hold its shape really well. That's another reason it makes a good beginner recipe. This is my cast iron loaf pans, and I did line it with parchment paper to make it easier to remove. So here is the dough in the oven. I proof at 85 degrees in my oven. So this is 2 hours later. You can see it's just starting to get above the rim of my loaf pans, but not enough to start baking. So just keep an eye on it once you get to 2 hours because it goes quick after 2 hours. This is 1 more hour of proofing, and I would definitely say I went too long, but I'm going to bake it anyway. It's about as far as you can stretch this recipe. It's about 2 inches above the rim, so I wouldn't push it any more than this. Otherwise, you might end up with flat bread. So this is after the bake. You can see I got a nice rise out of it. It's just delicious, this recipe. I highly recommend. Make sure to subscribe if you want the recipe when I do release it. It's coming soon, I promise. I'm a busy mom, but it is coming, I promise.